He slowed down to a walk, for his steed was already showing signs of fatigue, while he himself ached in his unaccustomed muscles, for it had been a long time since he had bestrode a horse. He began to wonder what he had best do, and as the cold rain trickled down his neck and his soggy clothes grew heavier upon his shoulders, he looked about uneasily, thinking perhaps he would have to seek shelter for the night and continue his pursuit in the morning. Until that moment he had not really thought out any plan of action. His one idea had been to get hold of the minstrel fellow, Maurice, and Master Walter Mape, and demand of them, in the name of Glastonbury, the torn book of the Saint Grail. It never occurred to him for a moment that it might not have been they who had taken it. The covetous look he had seen in their faces when they had been examining the book, and the feeling among many unscrupulous courtiers that they could appropriate anything they wished in the name of the king, made the whole thing seem inevitable to him. However, he would have to move warily in the matter. It would hardly do to burst in upon two full-grown men, highly respected at that, and bluntly demand the return of the Glastonbury treasure. Hugh groaned aloud, unable to think of anything more definite than to get where the book was quickly. He relinquished all thought of begging shelter somewhere for the night. The farther the court got ahead of him, the harder it would be to catch up with it. He urged on his horse again. The rain beat in his face, but he lowered his head against it and rode on. Soon the road became an indistinct line in the surrounding blackness. He had left a fairly good-sized village behind him, and was now in open country, what was probably pasture land and rolling hills, though he could not make out much of anything, with the rain pouring down upon him. He held his bridle loosely, leaving it to the horse to keep to the road which he himself could barely make out. No sound broke the stillness around him save the clopping of the horse's hoofs, the straining of the saddle leather, and the monotonous beating of the rain. Suddenly he heard a long, low whistle. His horse, startled, flung up his head and shied. Another whistle answered, more near at hand. Then a man's voice shouted, and another. There came the sound of feet running in the mud, and out of the black dark on every side appeared men. One seized Hugh's bridle, forcing the frightened horse back almost on his haunches. The boy could make out dimly forms and faces, though how many or what sort of men he could not have told. "Who is it rides so late upon the highway?" spoke the man at his bridle in a mocking voice. Hugh did not answer. "Why, 'tis but a boy," said someone else from the darkness. "Who let you out of the nursery?" the first voice spoke again. "Speak up now. Who are you? Whence came you? Where are you going?" They must be footpads, robbers, or criminal outlaws. Hugh was shaking with fear, but somehow managed to keep his voice calm and steady as he answered. "I be a boy out of Glaston, on my way to the king's court. I have naught about me that is worth your taking." "We will judge as to that," said one of the voices. "'Tis a good horse, at least," said another. Hands reached up and pulled Hugh roughly off his saddle. Someone thrust a lantern in his face, which blinded him for a moment, and then enabled him to see his would-be despoilers a little more clearly. The leader, a man still holding his horse's bridle, was a tall fellow with a bold, impudent face, and a cap with a curling feather in it. He regarded Hugh with a smile at once disdainful and a little curious, as the other men felt about his clothing for possible money or arms. "And why do you ride to the king's court?" said he. "Henry the Second is no friend of mine, if thou dost love him." He paused, leering unpleasantly. "I do not love King Henry," Hugh answered coldly, "but he is my liege lord, and I will tell him how his highways are beset with thieves, who molest honest folk, going upon their honest business. Sir, I bid you, in the name of the law, to let me go." The man laughed. "Boldly spoken, my poppycock. I like your manner well, but you have not yet informed me why you seek the king. I have a fancy to know." Hugh turned away angrily. For some reason he was not afraid any more. It would be wise to conciliate these men, he knew, yet something about their bold lawlessness made him wish to resist them, even where resistance was impossible. Refusing to answer, he stood sullenly silent. "There is naught in his pocket save a yellow ribbon," said one of the men, flaunting the favor that the little Lady Eileen had given him in the dim lantern light. Hugh snatched it back and put it in his pocket again before any hand could stop him. Odds blood, a lady's favour, cried the man who was evidently leader. The lad beginneth young. Let him keep the trinket, and if there is not more of worth of him to set him again upon his mysterious way. There had been a guffaw of laughter at the ribbon, which made Hugh flush indignantly in the dark. "Give me my horse, then," said he. "Nay, not so fast, young blade. The horse looketh to have mettle. He bides with us. Get you along on Shank's mare. Know you the saying? On your own 2 legs. Someone gave him a buffet on the back, which nearly sent him sprawling. Then the lantern moved away into the darkness. The men's voices followed it, and the tall fellow, still holding the bridle of Hugh's horse, led it down the road and away. The rain still fell steadily, relentlessly. Hugh shivered with cold, and the reaction to his fright. He could not see a yard before him. His lame foot ached, and when he sought to walk on it, a pain running through his thighs stabbed him like a knife. Feeling his way, groping, reaching for the bushes which bordered the road to guide him, he struggled on, not knowing for a surety whether he was retracing his steps or advancing. It was slow going, desperately slow. Hugh kept peering into the blank dark on all sides, hoping against hope that he might see a light or some sign of human habitation. At last he could go no further. Twice he had fallen, his weaker leg aching intolerably, had given out under him, and the second time it seemed as if he simply could not stand up on it again. He crawled into the bushes that crowded the edge of the road. At least he would find some shelter from the cold rain underneath them. It was not pouring so hard now, and, when he had pushed himself well into the thick underbrush, he found a relatively dry spot in which to lie down. But his wet clothes kept him shivering, and the ground was chill. He could not sleep, but at any rate he could rest his aching body until dawn. However, he must have slept, finally, in spite of all his discomfort, for he started broad awake suddenly, and saw that the night had broken, and the dim twilight of dawn lightened the sky above the road. He found his muscles stiff, almost beyond endurance, but at least the sunrise told him in which direction to go. Woods and bushes still bordered each side of the narrow road as he pushed on slowly and painfully. The day grew gradually lighter, and before long a warm sun slanted encouragingly upon him from between the budded trees. As he rounded a bend in the road, he was startled to come suddenly upon a horse which looked surprisingly like his own mount that the robbers had taken from him. Yes, it was indeed, and there beside him, stepping out from the underbrush, was the leader of the band. Hugh stopped, uncertain whether to go on or to turn and try to run away. The man, noting his hesitation, motioned to him. "Come, boy, you have nothing to fear," he called. Hugh advanced cautiously towards him. He was conscious of his limp, which was much worse than usual owing to the stiffness and fatigue in his muscles and the chill of wet clothing. He struggled against it and held his head high and proudly because of his uncomfortable self-consciousness. "So you are going to see the king," said the man when he had got quite close, "and though you love him not, you are loyal to him?" It seemed unnecessary to repeat the information he had given the night before, so Hugh remained silent. "I am not so disloyal to the king myself, as you might think, though, in sooth, I have much cause to hate him, my outlawry being the result of his high-handed, over-swift judgment. But enough of that. It hath come to my knowledge that one of the king's sons is instigating a revolt against his father, would be king in his stead without waiting for death to bestow the crown lawfully upon him. I like it not, and I would warn his majesty, yet I dare not show my face at court. Wilt thou take a written message to the king, boy?" "Ay, that I will," said Hugh, "though in truth I owe you nothing after last night's mistreatment. But for the king I would do that much." The man drew from the pouch that was hanging from his belt a soiled scrap of parchment, folded into a small square. "If thou couldst read," the man continued, "I would let thee see that the message is even as I tell thee." "I can read," said Hugh, "but I need not. There is something in thy face that promises truth, though thou art consorting with outlaws and footpads." The man grinned in not unfriendly fashion. "Thou art a bold-spoken youth," he said, giving the parchment into the boy's hands. "'Twill be quite useless to send the king's men after us, for we shall be gone past recovery in the twinkling of an eye." "That I would never do," said Hugh stoutly. I know too well what it means to a man to suffer the hue and cry." The two looked at each other, friendliness growing between them. "For the favour that I have asked thee," the man said, "here is thy horse again. Ride straight along this forest road for an hour or better. Then you will come upon a highway, wider and in more constant use than this. Turn north, and before the sun has reached the high noon mark, thou wilt come to a large manor castle. It is there that the king and his court have bided the night. If they have not been minded to go further, thou wilt still find them there. Farewell, boy, we shall not meet again." He vanished into the underbrush as completely as if the earth had opened and swallowed him. Hugh climbed into his saddle, thankful indeed to have his good horse between his knees again, thankful also that the outlaw had not returned it to him out of pity for his lameness. He drew a long breath and straightened his shoulders. "Come on, old man," he said aloud, pressing his heels into the horse's flanks. "Come on, the sun is shining, warm now. I shall soon be dry. Pick up your hoofs and hurry to the rescue of our treasure."